Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Brave Maker live show. I am Tony Gaffastone. It is Friday the 13th, and we are live on Friday the 13th in 2020. And everything so far has been going okay in my day. So I'm hoping that a masked man with a knife is not going to burst into the Brave Maker headquarters at the very last few hours of this day. But based on how 2020 has been going, all the memes have been giving me life. But I'm the founder of Brave Maker, a 501c3 nonprofit. I'm a filmmaker, writer, director, and I'm headquartered in Redwood City. And I'm with my co-host today.
Hey, what's going on, Tony? I'm Christina Jackson, advocate, actor, writer, singer, and I'm coming to you from the East Bay in Dublin, California.
Right on. You can go find out more about who Christina is at ChristinaJackson.com. And every week, if you are joining us live or listening to us on the replay on our podcast, we are talking with creative people from all over the world. And it's really fun for us as two creative people who are still learning and in our own process and in our own journey to talk to people and get wisdom and ideas and motivation. And today, we get to have my friend, Christopher Hibma, who's currently living in Minnesota.
I am. Hello. It's so great to be here.
So, Christopher, give us the quick backstory to who you are, because you are so many things. You are this designer. You are a strategist. You are a creative. You are a lover of theater. You are a gatherer of people. And you are someone who is not on social media, but in which we started our friendship on social media and then met in real life. So let's talk about all that is Christopher Hibma today. Give us a little backstory about who you are and what kind of work you're doing these days.
Well, your story about me not being on social media is, I guess, a good place to begin. A couple of years ago, my husband and I decided that we were spending far too much time scrolling the feeds instead of spending time with one another. And as daddy and papa to a little 4-year-old girl, she's 4-year-old now, we decided that rather than looking at our phones over dinner, we wanted to be looking at one another. And so that is a bit about who I am. I'm a dad, I'm a papa. I'm a husband. I am a creative. I am a lover of creative people. And yeah, for the last 15 years, I have been working pretty intently in the theater profession, most recently as the director of the Sundance theater program. And now I am onward to the next chapter and taking a bit of pause, as so many people are, and we are hunkered down in Minneapolis. I'm romanticizing this time by saying that we're wintering in Minnesota. Said no one ever, but that's what I'm saying today, where we are wintering in Minnesota.
I love it.
So how does a kid from Iowa farm end up at CES and all kinds of other amazing events all over the world? How does that happen, and when did you know I'm gonna pave my own way and do exactly what I want to do as an artist?
Christina, that's a really interesting question. It's something that I've asked myself so many times. when I heard you ask that question, my brain flashed back to the farm and the summer tasks that we used to do in Iowa. We used to, twice a season go and pick up all the rocks up off the field and put them on a big flatbed, or go through the soybeans and spray all the errant weeds. And I think that time of solitude, of quiet, really instilled in me a sense of contemplation and reflection, and the possibilities of what could be. I guess it's divine that I turned out the way I did versus the way the rest of my family did, and my journey from that space into some of the spaces that you mentioned is just, I don't know. It's luck, somewhat of it. It's privilege, some of it. I understand. It is also an openness and a curiosity to something bigger than myself. And I've just been so blessed. And now in this time of pause, I've really, really been reflecting on some of the spaces that I've been in. I have this app called Time Hop on my phone. So not being on social, but I'm still on Time Hop, and it tells me where I was every year on this date, as long as I've had content coming into my phone. And to be able to see interactions with friends in Lebanon and in Moscow and in Utah. And yesterday I had this great video pop up of some residency that I was a part of in Massachusetts at the Massachusetts Museum of Contemporary Art. And just seeing a video of that falling snow just reminded me of just how blessed I am to be in this world, to support artists like both of you, and to create opportunities to advance your work.
When I met you, Christopher, we met in person at Sundance, which was, I want to say 2018, but I could be wrong on that. I think it was 2018, maybe it was 2017, I'm not sure. But you were, again, a welcomer of me as a fellow creative, and then you brought me into this group of people for dinner one night, people that were doing plays, theater, and they were from all over the world. It was this beautiful, culturally diverse hub of writers and directors. And then when I was in New York, I want to say October, so about a year ago, when I was in New York, you invited me to your office, which was like this really cool space, that oversaw all the beautiful buildings in downtown New York, and it encouraged me to go see Slave Play by Jeremy O. Harris, which now I think is the most Tony nominated play ever. I hope I'm not wrong on that, but it is really cool how you've had your hand on the pulse of cutting edge creativity. It's hard to nail down, but what's something that you love the most, and how has it shaped you by being a part of all of these spaces? When you're around creative people and you're seeing these stories from all over the world, right? From Lebanon to New York City, what would you say how have you been shaped by the creatives that you are supporting and around in your life?
I mean, that is incalculable, and it is an impossible question to answer. I am because we are. That is a phrase that I learned through my work in East Africa, otherwise known as Ubuntu. Like, I am because we are. We are a collective. We are a we all the time. And I have derived so much joy and satisfaction throughout my career, particularly at Sundance, most recently, of crafting spaces for artists of all kinds, of writers, of directors, of dramaturgs, to just get out of their way so that they can animate on their own impulses. So that this world can be more informed by truth and by beauty and by nuance. And that's why I love to support artists is because I am, I deeply, deeply feel that as our culture sort of dumbs down, that we, particularly over the last number of years, that we have a responsibility to uplift. And that is really where I sit today.
I love that so much. So when you are sitting down with an artist to craft a space, what do you need to know from them? What kind of interaction, what kind of energy? If you and I sat down and I said, hey, I'm working on a comic book, which I am, and this is my space, where would we begin?
Wow, what a beautiful question. It begins by having a personal relationship with you, by sitting across from you or sitting on this on a video call with you, and by just getting to know who you are as a person. And then I begin to implement a couple of design principles that inform the space that we want to create together. And this is a space that ultimately isn't fixed, but is adaptable. So everything from what you need to leave your house, to get on an airplane, to go somewhere, to what kind of pillow you need to put your head on at night, to what your writing space or creative space or generative space might need to look like in order for you to write that comic book in the way that you most want to. That is always the sort of the root of our conversation. These design principles are really something that we all do sort of really basically in our lives. We take a look at light, we take a look at space, we take a look at the intention of a room, of an environment together. When are you in this space? What is the light doing throughout the day? How do you need to be nourished throughout the day? Those are the kinds of things that we would have a conversation about. Really, it's what do you need? You're in the driver's seat as the creative. How can the organization or the institution or the individual support you in that journey the best way possible?
So Christopher, the role you're talking about sounds a lot like in the film world as a producer too. It sounds like you do a lot of producing, but also sounds like you're a guide, you're a partner, maybe is there a little bit of counseling therapy in there? I don't know, like friend. So right now you're at a space where you're kind of looking for what the next step is. Are you doing one-on-one consulting with artists? What does it look like? And if somebody wanted to partner with you, what would that look like?
Well, my focus right now is actually quite personal, and I'm happy to share a little bit about that. I have, as you know, spent the last number of years inside a pretty well-known organization. And that organization opened so many doors, not only for me, but for the artists that I was blessed to walk alongside. I lost myself, I think, a little bit in that journey, and that I began to define myself as a reflection of that organization, of Sundance. Now, there's nothing wrong with Sundance. I'm not implying that in the least. I'm just saying that my response to being in that environment was one where I derived my value from being associated with the brand. So my job to myself over the last few months, since this transition has started to make itself known, is to write a new narrative for myself, which is to say, rather than where do I work, is what do I value and what do I love to do? And I have continued to answer your question, be really invested in the people in my life. And to that end, I've generated a series of conversations that I'm calling river conversations. And as you may know, the state of Minnesota possesses the headwaters of the Mississippi River, which flows through the entire country. And while I was anticipating the move here, which was filled with a bit of trepidation and with sadness in a way of giving up something that once was, I needed to find a new way to embrace the intentionality of this moment. Mm-hmm. And so these river conversations are a way to return to a bit of bubbling spirit, a place that is constantly flowing, that has its eddies and its offshoots, but is always going somewhere. And much like your beautiful conversations that you're hosting here, it's a way for me personally to connect with the people in my life, many of whom are practicing artists, and some of whom are not. And we all have that creative spirit inside of us. So these conversations have been a natural extension of the intention that I have to be a space of gathering for people to just have conversation with one another.
Christopher, it sounds a lot too like the conversation that many of us need to have about how we find our value and how we find our identity, which sometimes is too attached to what we do and too attached to our work, so that when our work is removed, or when we switch jobs, or when the love or the response doesn't come in the way we think it should come, how that affects us. Is that some of the work that you seem to be doing in your own way, and maybe that you're trying to help provide for others?
Well, this time has made it so apparent to me that I know so little about how to support artists, because artists, as you both aren't always aligned with an institution and have to sort of find that fortitude within your own self. And now I'm learning that at 47 years old, how to do that for the first time. And I have a greater admiration for the resiliency that you as creatives have on a day-by-day basis to, just move forward, to sort of get your personal life in order, and also to create space for there to be generative, creative time at the same time.
I love that so much. I think that's probably the most.
Oh, I think we lost you, Christina. I'll let you refresh a second. All right, there you go. Back? You're back. There you go.
Okay. I was saying, I think what Christopher is talking about is one of the most important messages for artists to understand, is to be able to write a new narrative for yourself, that you don't identify too closely with what you do, that you don't become too performance-based. I definitely was at a similar crossroads years ago when I thought I'd play professional soccer. Injury prevented me from doing that. But once I was at that point, it was like, well, who am I without soccer? And it was like all these questions, and I had to write a new narrative for myself, and that was extremely difficult. And no one had ever really sat down and talked to me the way you are, to say that you're not, you're not just an actor, you're not a writer or a singer. Like, that's not all that you are. You're so much more than that. And you have to be able to pivot and to write a new narrative, and to just know that you're more than what you do, and you can do other things. And as an artist, you have to be aware of that in order to support yourself and nurture yourself. I love that so much.
And this pandemic time has forced us all to have to think about who we are, removed from our, like, the thing that has given us value, which is sort of our being out in the world, right? Right now, I'm really trying hard to find value in just being a partner and a dad, and finding joy in the daily tasks that I need to do to keep our family moving forward. The grocery shopping, the filling up the humidifier every night, the the stuff, and I think we have a tendency to forget that we're just part of the human race sometime, and we just need to find some solitude or some gratification in the daily tasks.
Yeah. My wife and I were doing some reflecting last night. We had our anniversary, and so we were all just getting, sappy and goo-goo-eyed.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Happy anniversary.
It was so fun to kind of look back. But, we're talking about like what I'm always like, what's 1 year, 5 years, 10 years? And she's like, can we just get through today? But I needed to hear last night. She was just saying, because I'm like super goal oriented, and I want to achieve, and I'm trying to get after these dreams. And I said, next year I'll have my feature film in production. That's the hope, right? And then I'll really feel like then I can go, oh, okay, like that's what I've been working so hard for. But then she said, don't you think you're always going to be saying there's a next thing though? Even after you make one film, aren't you going to say, well, then I have to make a second film that's bigger, or I have to do so? Don't you think? Like, and she looked at me and she just said, you're doing what you love to do now. Like, isn't that enough? I was like, it kind of made me like just choke up, because I don't know sometimes how to be present in this and go back to like, yeah, I am doing what I love, and I do have this family and a wife and children. It's really hard, and I'm thinking like maybe like you said earlier, is that a privilege in some way, Christopher, to just say I get to just be present and be aware and take care of myself, because sometimes I feel like my self-care is a reward that I give to myself after working hard, but I don't think that's healthy. I feel like as artists, so much is tied to trying to pay the bills with what we love, and so a large percentage of us don't really get to do that. We're just spinning so many plates. So any thoughts on that? Any thoughts on like what tangibly we could, and I don't like the word should, but need to be prioritizing when it comes to our self-care? Especially in a pandemic, when lots of things are being removed from our life. Lots of parts of our livelihood are no longer a valid form of work anymore. By the way, Kate said, so good for me right now. Good Lord, I've been doing this for 50 years instead of just being right where I am now. Thanks, Kate.
Can I want to jump in to tag onto what Kate just said. Instead of being right here where I am now, we're going to announce our faves, but I wasn't going to add this as a fave, but there is a book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and it kind of ties into what you're talking about, Tony. How do you just enjoy?
Oh, we lost you again. Stand by for 3 seconds as the delay comes. She'll be back. There she is. Eckhart Tolle. Go ahead.
Eckhart Tolle. So Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, it's really a beautiful book that helps you understand and practice how to enjoy doing what we're doing right now, instead of always projecting into the future. I'll be happy then, once I achieve this, once I have that, then I'll be happy. So it's really beautiful, and it can really help you start to just enjoy the moment now, instead of always living in the past or projecting into the future.
I'm not good at that.
Well, we all need to take a lesson from your wife, Tony, and just sort of sit in the awareness of what we have, what we are right now. Not that we abandon the aspiration to achieve and to be better, but I know for me, the search for contentment is my ongoing burden to bear. When is it that I feel okay? And that's just an ongoing journey. Thank God for my therapist.
Let's normalize therapy for sure. And the beautiful thing right now is therapy is happening over Zoom. So you could be in the comfort of your own home or bedroom or wherever and talk to somebody. It's really an important part. I love that. Well, so Christopher, you are in Minnesota, and I think sometimes as someone who's from the Midwest, I'm from Illinois. Don't you forget? I'm not going to forget my roots, okay? Just because I'm in the West Coast. You were in New York on the East Coast. There's a lot of creative things happening all over the place, right? What do you say to people who are watching or listening who feel like they don't have access to the support that they need, or to the collaborators that they hope for, or maybe they're not in LA, they're not in New York? What could they do? What are some things that people could be doing after they practice some good self-care to help move their projects forward, whatever they are?
By the way, one of my practices of self-care is to have, during COVID, a martini every day at 5 o'clock. So that's just,
I love that.
So you already had it, right? Because it's.
I totally did. So I'm just saying that.
Right on.
I think that there's something really beautiful that's happening as a result of the tragic loss of employment that so many creatives are having in the centers of culture in Los Angeles and New York, is that return to their places of birth or their local communities. I'm going to be really interested to see over the next few years how those communities now are influenced and can evolve as a result of the creative class, in a way, sort of coming back home. As someone who was born in Iowa, as you mentioned at the top of the podcast, I've always had a soft spot in my heart for folks who have chosen to stay in their local communities rather than sort of go to the places of perceived cultural power. And I wasn't one of those people. I have lived in both Los Angeles and New York. But I am always very fascinated by the ability to make a living and have an amazing quality of life in other parts of the US. So your question, I'm not an answer giver. So I'm not going to have some brilliant pearl of wisdom here about what one needs to do to have a creative life. I think being a creative is a choice and is an act of discipline. And that discipline includes sort of a daily ritual of investing in your practice and in reaching beyond yourself. I'm a big believer in trying to reach beyond your fingertips into places that you don't have any awareness of yet, because it will only make you make one a more well-rounded and interesting person at the end of the day. And I think no one will make the art that you will make. You are the only person who can make that. And the world needs it. And whether the world is, the 4 people around your dining room table right now, or the 4 million people who are seeing you on a social media platform, the world needs what you have to say.
Yes. Yes.
I love that so much. You have had the privilege of being in a world that, for people in the filmmaking industry, is so magical, is so alluring. So if you could tell us, what were some of the highlights of Sundance?
It's interesting because, I was sort of in the adjacent to the film world. Like I worked at Sundance, but I ran our theater program, at least in the later years. And I always felt a little bit like an outsider in the film community. I remember, Tony, you and I, as you mentioned, met at the film festival, and I went to the film festival for 15 years. And I think it wasn't until the last 2 years that I actually knew what the hell I was doing there, like how to make it happen. I think these things are really opaque and confusing, and they're these false perceptions of power. The beautiful thing about a place like Sundance is that there is access to all manner of creatives and decision makers that convene in a single space over time, over a period of 10 days in January. And now, like during the pandemic, it'll be interesting to see how the organization, how the film festival continues to embrace that, the sort of happening, the way you bump into people on Main Street. I feel super, super blessed to have been in rooms with some of the culture makers, the greatest culture makers of our time. I don't take it for granted. I also don't understand how I got there. And I will always feel like that little, farm kid, that little gay kid from Iowa. But it has given me a real sense of what a good storyteller entails. That there are so many ways to be that label, particularly as we look into communities around the world. That, you know, being an American storyteller is so different than being a storyteller from Uganda, for example. The obstacles that we have to overcome in order to tell our stories. And yeah, I have a deep passion for the engagement of, you know, different parts of the world coming together and colliding and learning from one another. Obviously, the American film industry is super powerful, super influential. It's one of America's like greatest soft powers, right? Is having, and particularly independent film. And I think that hubris sometimes, though, can be damaging when engaging with other cultures, and that we should not be entering the world with any sort of exceptionalism, but with a real spirit of humility and of grace. So I feel like I'm going a little bit all over the map here, but yeah, it's just an interesting time to be an American, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
A beautiful time to be an American, right?
Thank you,
and with little Kamala
Madame
Harris
Vice
behind
President.
you.
That's right, Madame Vice President in the background. We just acknowledge you.
Yeah, we got Kamala Harris in the house today. If you're able to see this, those listening to my podcast, I had the fortune of being at Manny's in San Francisco, doing an event with the lesbian dating app Her. And when I arrived at Manny's, there was a Kamala Harris cutout. This was back in January. And I asked some of the people who were there doing another event, I was like, could I have that? And they're like, yeah, we're done with that. And I was like,
What?
I know. And my mom grabbed it, and it was funny. She was like, because we had to park so far away. I don't know, you guys have been in San Francisco. Parking sometimes can be a nightmare. We found a garage like so far away from Manny's. And my mom was like, are you really going to make me walk 3 blocks over? And I was like, Mom, it's Kamala. And she did. And so here she is. And there's an amazing energy here in the Bay Area. And I think it's going to be so good for creatives. Like, yes, air hugs. It's a wonderful time for creatives. And Christopher, you went off on that, and there were so many places in that response I wanted to come back to, such as rubbing shoulders with cultural. What did you say? What was the expression? Like, you got to work with so many people who are kind of setting the tone for our culture, and you've heard so many stories. I guess what I want to go back to is, what is one of your favorite stories? Who is one of your favorite storytellers?
Oh man, you're just asking me to, like Solomon, to divide the baby in half.
We always say here too, we don't do Q&As, we do Q&Rs. No answers necessary, but responses are required, because there's no way we could possibly have all the answers. So all we do is ask questions and respond. That's the best we could do.
I love that, Q&Rs. Well, my response to that really great provocation is my heart is skipping into different places around the globe right now, and I first land in Uganda with Asimwe Deborah Kawe, who is a beautiful colleague of mine, who is a playwright, but is also a gatherer of emerging theater makers in Kampala, and is working in a context that is not always supportive of artists. I think of the theater company, Zukok Theater Company in Beirut, Lebanon, who, as a result of the recent explosions that happened in the port of Beirut, had great damage to their space. Oh, look, there's Tracy Scott Wilson. Andre Holland, look at you. Okay, this is not fair. I'm going to start crying in a second here. I mean, these are all beautiful American artists that are showing up on the screen. Yeah, a fellow Ugandan, Kenneth Chumule, who's a comedian in Uganda. The greatest female theater maker in Rwanda, There's Deborah that I was just mentioning about in Uganda. Anyway, I'll stop as this keeps going because this is a cavalcade of beautiful memories. God, yeah, tears. Thank you. You've just spared me from having to try to concentrate rather than looking at those gorgeous faces. Those are just a few of the people that I've been super blessed to work with. I was just mentioning before that came on about the artists in Lebanon who, are sort of known for their resiliency over years and years of conflict and sort of disenfranchisement by their government, being abandoned by them, and what they are able to do right now, who they are right now. My heart is just full to bursting with the colleagues and friends that we have over there, and the ability to introduce those friends to my American colleagues is a true joy and a true passion. Over a couple of years at Sundance, one of the things that I'm most proud of is that we really confronted the notion of American exceptionalism by moving our signature theater program that had happened for 30 plus years in the mountains of Utah. And it happened very successfully. But we moved it lock, stock, and barrel to North Africa as an expression to say, you are not the center of the universe. And that being in a room with Arab colleagues and hearing the call to prayer come over the wall 5 times a day is going to influence your work, we believe, in a profound way. So.
Well, you are truly I don't know. I mean, you're more than just a creative. You have like this genius empathy as well, this creative heart for people and for story, and truly are a unique individual, Christopher. So I'm super glad that I got to meet you, and I love the heart that you bring to the world through your experience and through your love of the craft of art and theater and storytelling and storytellers. It's really, really beautiful. So thanks so much for giving us your time. And anything else?
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say? I mean, please say that while we tell people, Christopher's not on social media, but you can go to his website at CHRISTOPHERHIBMA.com. You can see his name right underneath his image there. But Christopher, we are starting this thing called Brave Faves, and this is only our third time doing it. We just started it like on the broadcast a couple weeks ago, but we're excited to every week now end our experience, our live show and podcast with suggestions, favorites of the week, could be favorites of the year, of the pandemic, favorites of the day, whatever they are, any kind of media, book, film, TV, whatever you want to share. So we'll start with you today as our guest. What's something that's a brave fave for you?
Well, I have 2 actually. One is a book that I'm in the middle of, which is a new publication by a guy who happens to be a friend as well. His name is Casper Terqui, which is The Power of Ritual, turning everyday activities into soulful practices.
Perfect.
So my daily martini, my time with you here today, my morning bath, the drive to school with my daughter, that these are ritualistic activities that give me meaning and are soulful actually in my life. So that's my first brave fave.
I think that's a great one. Just like what you were saying earlier, again, good nuggets that you were sharing today. But in your response to the question about what we can be thinking about as creatives is, do we have rituals? And every creative needs to find a ritual that works for them, right? That's why I love that you said you didn't have an answer, because not everything is going to be a one size fits all. So that's a great, perfect brave fave. Thanks for sharing that. What's your other one?
Well, my other is a piece of media content that is, taking the airwaves by storm, but Lovecraft Country just continues to surprise my husband and I every night. Last night we were like clutched in each other's arms as we were nearing the final episode of this season, and just couldn't be, prouder of the creative team that brought this story to life, that sort of is writing a new narrative for the name Lovecraft, that is, shining a necessary spotlight on the plight of Black Americans in our country, in a way that is like super entertaining and frightening and hair-raising at the same time.
Well, I need to also credit Christopher with, so Christopher is married to a Black man, and raising a Black daughter. And so you care about this so deeply as a person. And when I was in New York, I said, Christopher, okay, I've got like 2 nights to go see plays, and you are like the center of my my world in New York with plays. So he's like, you got to go see this play called Slave Play. And I was like, all right. And he's like, it's a little edgy. It's a little controversial. I'm like, bring it on. I love it. So I will say that my brave fave is going to be Slave Play, which just became I think one of the most Tony nominated plays on Broadway in some history. Look it up, but it's by a playwright named Jeremy O. Harris. And it was about 3 couples in interracial relationships. And it's I've only seen like a handful of things on Broadway, but this was something that I will never forget. I've been following Jeremy O. Harris, who now has a deal with HBO. Speaking of HBO's Lovecraft Country, he has a film named Zola that was at Sundance earlier this year. I mean, this guy is someone you should follow. So he's my brave fave, Jeremy O. Harris. Go follow him, and we'll put him in the comments as well as the show notes if you're listening to the podcast.
Christina, what are your
what you got?
My brave fave, Tony, if you could pull it up here. My fave is a documentary that is so close to my heart. So I was born in a small town in Pennsylvania, and I moved to the West Coast. And when I moved to the West Coast, I moved to Stockton, California in the 90s. And Stockton has, really got a really bad rap over the years about being crime-ridden, but it's a beautiful city, an incredibly diverse city, and we have a spectacular mayor now, Michael Tubbs, and his vision is so grand and so beautiful. The platform is really all love, and he wants to uplift everyone. He doesn't believe in poverty. He believes poverty should be done away with. Let's leave that in 2020. And he just has these huge, magnificent ideas for the city, and he's already transforming it. He caught a lot of slack because he just gave out money. He thought, I don't know if you guys have heard about this story. What's the best way to uplift people? Let's just give them money. So they identified certain people and they gave them money, and it has been working in the city. He's also reduced crime by 38% by implementing a really radical program by taking people who have been to prison to work with people in the community who are involved in gangs, who are involved in criminal activity. And he's had dramatic results, and he wants to impact homelessness. He also doesn't believe in that. Neither do I. I don't believe, we should have our loved ones on the streets. I think that's also should be left in 2020. So it's a magnificent documentary. I could go on and on. He and I both went to Franklin High School. We're Franklin High School graduates, Yellow Jackets. And it's beautiful. That's my brave fave.
I love it.
Yes.
I have one more. Can I add
do
one
it.
more?
Do it. I was going to say HBO did not pay us. They are getting unpaid endorsements today. So do you have something non-HBO, Christopher?
I'm sorry. I'm going to climb on the HBO train here.
Here we go.
What is it?
November 21st is the premiere of a piece that I have been involved with for a number of years, which is an adaptation of Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me, which was adapted into a stage version, which premiered at the Apollo Theater and at the Kennedy Center. And my friend Camila Forbes over at the Apollo Theater has done a remarkable job, a heroic job during COVID to craft something that is both reverent to Ta-Nehisi's animating words and his impulses for writing his book, but also super reflective of this moment in reflection of the tragic murder of George Floyd. So I just wanted to say that real quick. It's coming out November 21st. I saw a little rough cut, and I can't wait for you all to see it. Wow. I mean, I have like 10 more of that I could share with you.
Well, you just gotta have to come back on the regular over
you gotta
here.
Come back.
So that trailer was fire. Just watching that. So I just put the trailer also in the chat. We'll have it on the show notes if you're listening to audio. But maybe we can get the filmmaker on this podcast to talk, Christopher. Maybe you can connect that. That is phenomenal. That would be so great.
Her first film.
Wow, so good. Oh my gosh. See, this is why we do what we do. The power of brave stories to change the world. This is so good. Thank you, Christopher, so much for being with us. Stand by just 1 second. So hopefully you were inspired today as you were watching, and know that we as a 501c3 nonprofit, we can't do this work without you. Your support, your generosity, especially as we come to the end of the year, enables Christina and myself and our whole team to continue to curate these amazing storytellers and creative guests, as well as we are producing original films. And I want to do a huge shout out to our newest fiscal sponsee, Laura Farrow. You're going to hear about her on Monday with her documentary called Pregnant on the Streets. It's a documentary that we have just partnered with, a Bay Area story about women who are finding the help that they need to bring babies into the world while they're experiencing homelessness. We want to shout out the brave storytellers that have come through us and have partnered with us, because this is why we exist. These brave people who are lifting their voices, as Christopher said. Our goal is to uplift these voices. And I would encourage you to go to our website at bravemaker.com and sign up on our e-newsletter at bravemaker.com/buzz. And if you can give and support us, we would love that. Your support means the world, so that we can continue to do the work that we're doing. Christina can launch her podcast called Wheel Queens, which is about bringing disability back into diversity, and so much more. So that's us. Christina, any final words?
Go check out Lovecraft. Oh my gosh. You have to watch this show. Enjoy this show. Chase your dreams. You're more than what you're chasing, if that makes any sense. And just enjoy every little moment. Enjoy all of it. Right on. And Christopher, any final words from you?
Try to embrace reflective moments in your life.
Yep, right on. It's Friday the 13th, everybody. Be safe, be bold, and be brave. And as always, brave stories change the world. And you are the story. That's right. Here's our in-process final bumper, but you'll see the final one in about a month. But we're going to play the in-process one. Stay tuned. We'll be right back, Christopher.